Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this exciting workshop. My name is Mindy, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm ALTEC's Language Classes Program Coordinator, and ALTEC is all about languages and the faculty who teach them. We provide a variety of program resources and support to faculty teaching languages as well as students learning languages. To learn more, you can visit our website, subscribe to our newsletter, or email us at altec@colorado.edu. We'll drop those things in the chat as well. Today's workshop is titled Creating Interactive Language Materials with H5P and is presented by Maggie. Maggie's pronouns are she, they. They earned their PhD in German Studies from CU Boulder, and they have had many roles at ALTEC. Most recently, as ALTEC's learning design expert, Maggie produced a series of compelling open access online learning modules to support student learning of Tibetan as part of a UISFL grant awarded to the Center for Asian Studies. Anyone can explore the free online beginning Tibetan language course. At CU Denver, Maggie is an adjunct lecturer of German. They also serve part-time at the program in Jewish Studies here at CU Boulder and are a member of the DDGC Mutual Aid Action Group. We ask that you remain muted while our hosts present and use the chat to ask questions. We'll be moderating the chat and we will have time at the end to discuss questions. And with all of that, I will turn it over to Maggie.
Thank you, Mindy. Thank you, Ashlyn. And thank you, ALTEC, for giving me this opportunity to share a very cool tool with you all. I've been working with this tool for a few years now, and it's very easy to use, but it did take a lot of trial and error to kind of get familiar with it. So today, my intentions are to just give you a very elementary introduction. What is H5P? I'm going to show you some examples and talk about how and for whom this is useful and show you what kind of content you can create with this tool as well. I have a note here too about a resource on H5P content accessibility, because this is a technological tool. We're always concerned with accessibility for various kinds of students, right? Disabled, low vision, things like that. I will also show you how to access the tool and use it. And because this is an ALTEC workshop, I am focusing on how to use this tool in language instruction, but it can be used by educators in any field. So hopefully people who watch this recording at a later time, if there's useful information, please share with colleagues in various fields. And if you already are familiar with H5P, perhaps you encourage your students to engage with activities that are found in OER language books. I can show you how to embed those activities in your own learning management system, so Canvas or a website. And then I can also show you how to download and adapt content that you find in OERs for your own purposes. And I'm working from a very small laptop today, so and I'm going to go in between various windows. So if I am kind of slow to find what I'm looking for, I thank you in advance for your patience. I'm going to first, it looks like the resource page is already dropped in the chat. I'm going to drop it again just in case. And one more thing. I'm happy to answer questions in real time. It took me it took me a while to figure out how to access this tool within the CU system. So if at any point you have questions or need clarification, please don't hesitate to interrupt me, raise your hand. We're a small group here, so you feel free to just unmute yourself. I'm happy to address questions as they come up. Okay, so let's start with, I'm just going to share my screen. We see the resource page here. So basically, the first question, what is H5P? It's a free application that helps you, it's like an app. So it helps you create a variety of multimodal learning activities that can be integrated into your learning management system like Canvas. I think Drupal is also compatible. And there are several kinds of websites that you can use this with as well. And I'm going to just jump over to this page. There are over 50 kinds of content types that you can use. And I'll show you a few of these. They're all listed here in alphabetical order. Advent calendar, that's a fun one for my German colleague here. You can create collages, charts. You can record authentic materials for your students. Dialogue cards, these are sort of like flashcards, vocabulary flashcards. Dictation, I'll show you an example of that. The drag and drop is very popular. Drag the words into like a block of text, fill in the blanks, etc. So let me go through a couple of these. I'll show you an example of a drag and drop. So blueberries are blue. Strawberries are red. Oops. And cloudberries are orange. Okay. The cool thing about this tool is that I get automatic feedback, right? And it's very useful in language learning, especially for our non-credit ALTEC courses where we're not using a textbook, right? Another useful way to use this tool is if you have content missing in the textbook that you're using. Say you're a language instructor in a department and teaching 4-credit courses, and you love the book, but maybe you don't have grammar activities that, for example, offer exercises with how to use non-binary pronouns, right? This is something very important to our students. But a lot of textbooks, even contemporary textbooks, don't give a lot of attention to that sort of grammar exercises. So you can create these in using H5P and then embed it into your Canvas course. And I will give attention to this very quickly. The link that I just clicked on shows you how accessible these content types are. I'll just highlight here that the screen reader testing that the H5P team has done has used NVDA and Chromebox. So those are the screen reader programs that the team is aware of, that these content types are compatible with. If it's highlighted in red, it means they don't recommend using it, even if it says it's accessible, because there have been a mistake. So this is a really useful and important document to be aware of, especially if you use Universal Design for Learning in your courses and have students with disabilities. So yeah, there are many that are accessible. A lot of the ones that I'm going to focus on today, like the dialogue cards, the drag and drop, the drag the words, fill in the blanks, all of these are very accessible. Now, I'll say too, though, that for instructors of less commonly taught languages, for example, I just created an OER for Tibetan, and that language you can't find in Google Translate, right? That language is very difficult to access. And so, of course, it's, those kind of languages are not going to be screen readable anyway. So it's just something to be aware of if you are prioritizing access for your learners. Okay. So I think that was a little bit of housekeeping there. You can, so these links, you can see all the different types of activities, and you also have extensive documentation that you can refer to on how to create that. In other words, tutorials, okay? Let me go back to a few more examples here that are particularly useful for language learning. Here's another example. I like to use these hotspot ones if I'm showing a map of a city, for example. Say I want to do a unit on Vienna, and there are a lot of cool places, a lot of museums to go to in Vienna. So I could show sort of a Google Map image, and then have these, click on these highlights and then give rich information about that particular venue or sightseeing point in English or German or whatever your language that you're operating in. Yeah, more examples. And you can also embed a video.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm going to show you how to make this.
Maybe you find like a tour of Vienna in German, or a tour of a museum in that language that you're working in, and you can embed that. So it's very, very rich content there. And we also have, this is an interesting one, dictation, very useful for language. So this is a very simple exercise. Just click on the audio and play buttons below, listen to the samples, and type what you've heard. So I'm going to click on the audio.
The cake is a lie. Full stop.
Now, because it has a British, the speaker has a British accent, it was a little bit hard for me to hear. We have this option to go a little bit slower.
The cake is a lie. Full stop.
Full stop. Okay.
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Exclamation mark.
Exclamation point. Okay, and I'm gonna check that. Hey, there are 14 possible mistakes that I could have made, and it would have highlighted if I made a mistake. So this is a great content for creating an activity in the language that you are teaching, right? And then I'll show you one more. Yeah, the speak the words. This is also helpful. Oh, actually, I'm going to go back. And I'm going to drop this in the link for you all. So it's an example of this speak the words activity. This one is in English. So what is 2 + 2? 4. Two plus 2 is 4. 4. It didn't understand me, I guess. That's a bad example. But the example that I dropped in the chat was Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, but maybe some of you would like to give it a try. And it also kind of spells out the answer in phonetics for you. You can practice that with the link that I dropped. Okay, so before I get into how to build these, I wanted to show you an example of how I've used these in my course. So this is my fall non-credit German advanced conversation course. I organize everything by the week and by theme. And in week 3, for example, our content was games. So we learned vocabulary and how to use the vocabulary around like board games and card games and things like that. And so I kind of organize the content every day by theme and then kind of split it into two: activities that students can do before the class and activities that students can do after the class. So because this is a ALTEC courses are non-credit, we don't have a book. I try to provide activities for students to do before it, to provide as much as a flipped classroom approach as possible. So for this topic, I provide first in this first tab some vocabulary. So this links to a set of vocabulary cards. And then here I've got this nice image of a variety of games and this vocabulary that just kind of reinforces what they were getting in these vocabulary cards. Images are always helpful. And then the next activity is to put these images or match these images with a description of what comes in the box. So this says Christopher's favorite games when he was a child were 1, 2, 3, the names of these different games. And then the task is to connect or match them with the material within the box. So again, this reinforces the vocabulary that the students read in the first two tabs. And it's just a drag and drop activity. So I see here 2 game boards. Okay, that's very obvious. This is the right image. But then I can, strengthen my vocabulary understanding with, okay, there are 5 different figures and there are 4 colors for each player, for each player. And then there are 11 other objects and then 1 die. So just kind of reinforces what they got. Really easy, and I check it. And then I always offer explicit grammar instruction. And here I've embedded an activity that I did not create. This comes from an open education resource for German. And I borrowed that from that source and put it into my Canvas. So the grammar that I'm teaching here is in the imperative mood. And so we have some examples, and then folks get to see authentic material. The people who created the OER went to several German-speaking countries and took images of what people will see on the streets, right? This says, "Give me your trash." And the question here is, what form of the imperative do you see? Do you see the singular informal, the plural informal, or the formal? And here it is informal. I check that, that's correct. Okay, I'm going to move on. And you can put a lot of content in one block, which is a really seamless way also to scaffold here. So what form of the imperative do you see here? This is the formal. Great, I'm going to move on. Let's say I choose the wrong one. This is a plural informal. Let's say I choose the wrong one. Okay, I can either retry or just go ahead and let them show me the solution. I'm going to retry. Got it correct. Let's see. I'll click the wrong one again. I just don't know what this is. It'll show me the solution here. So it's automatic feedback. Your students can play around with it, over and over and over. And if it, once you build something into your Canvas shell, you don't ever have to build it again. You can reuse that material, use it for your next class. It always feels, especially I think for ALTEC courses, we put so much effort into creating these beautiful shells. And it might feel like a lot of front end loading, but you can always copy and paste this material into the next next terms, or, choose what works, choose what doesn't work. This is another exercise that I drew from that same German OER. And this is more sort of informational content that scaffolds, and then a few activities here after they get more maybe sophisticated grammar instruction. Okay, so you get the idea. Okay, here's an example of where I pulled that material. This is just a website that is accessible to everyone. And because H5P is an open source resource that you can use, reuse, and adapt, whenever you see this H5P line that says reuse and embed, that's where you can, that you can take it and put it into your own Canvas or your own website, whatever you're using. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do that. But first, also in this resource page, I have examples of language OERs with H5P activities, so you can see what's out there. Maybe you're already using some of this, and helpful resources if you don't want to build your own and you just want to use something that's pre-made. I have some resources here. I have to mention two things in this list. I try to represent all the languages that are offered at ALTEC. The number 10, this OER for American Sign Language, it has a few H5P elements, but none of them are instructional. So I think it's important to identify a gap in that with that language. And then also, I couldn't find anything with Japanese. There are a lot of OER Japanese books out there, but none that I found that had H5P. So another gap that could be filled. And on this Pressbooks directory, I want to show you how you can find specific content for your language that you're working with. So I just plugged in Spanish, and we have 7 pages of OERs that are, accessible to everyone. And then it shows you how many activities are in that particular book. This one has 127. So I click on that. And then you can see, that's not a very good example. Let me go back here. You can see the different types, and then you can have the activity be shown to you. And it looks like this is a list of nouns with their grammatical gender. If I wanted to use that, I could just take that. That's an example. Okay. This will be useful in a moment as well. But I hope that I hope that this is a helpful resource. You have all kinds of languages. And of course, the H5P is very, very useful for the less commonly taught languages as well. But I only found a few in that directory. There could be more, but these are the ones that I found: the Hindi, Khmer, and representations of everything that is taught at ALTEC. Okay, so any questions so far? You kind of get the idea of, there are 50 types. I only showed you examples of a few, but I can show, well, you can explore on your own, and I can also show you how to build them, right? We'll get into kind of the back end of things to see how the mechanics work. But up to this point, any questions or observations or comments or ideas that where I might be useful that I didn't mention here? Okay, then I will move on. Oh, one other example that I just think is really, really great from this open education resource in German. This is a listening activity. So you have both native and non-native speakers giving their own definition of gender and gender as a social category. And you have a transcript of that audio. So especially for beginning learners, it's always helpful to listen and read at the same time, but you have this extra component here, read along as you listen, and you can mark the cognates, which kind of just helps with comprehension. And then the second recording, you have the dialogue or you have the transcript as well, but there is a drag and drop feature. So just reinforcing that close listening, if you will. And then some comprehension questions afterwards. I thought that was a really great example. Okay. So how do we, I'm going to skip this. How do we access H5P? Many colleges and universities have H5P as a plugin in their learning management system. CU does not. So there are two ways that you can access H5P. This is a really old WordPress, very, very outdated. But when you go to plugins, and let's say you have your own WordPress and it's the free version, right? It's not the upgraded, you don't pay for a plan. You'll find the plugin here. But in order to add it to my free version of WordPress, I have to upgrade. And I don't want to spend money on that. So even though it says H5P is free, it's not really free unless you have a hosting site of your own. If you have your own hosting site, you can add the plugin here. I don't want to pay for that. So an alternative is Buffs Create. Is anyone here familiar with Buffs Create? Alina, was that a nod? You kind of are. Okay, good. I'm glad to know that there are some people out there that are familiar with it. Basically, Buffs Create, so the University of Colorado Boulder has paired up with a hosting platform to give you free access to all these plugins that you would otherwise have to have your own paid for hosting site to access. So this is a workaround. And it's paired up with Reclaim. And basically CU pays for your access to this as long as you are an affiliate, and to access this, you just need to plug in your CU credentials. Okay, so this is available to students, faculty, staff, anybody with an identikey. This is a free workaround, and it doesn't take that long to create an account. Once you create an account, okay, so this is my other, pardon me. Let me just go back to actually, let me log in. Let me show you how this, oh wait, I'm already logged in. All right, what do I want to do here? So this is what it looks like when you get into Buffs Create. You have all these options to have your own WordPress site or Omeka site or Scholar site. There are lots of applications that you can access, and the H5P plugin is accessible on a few of these. I'm just going to use WordPress because it's just, I know it exists there. It also exists on the the Pressbooks that I think might be accessible here as well. I believe they are. Anyway, to keep it simple, WordPress. So I'm going to oops. look at my applications, and I have two. So I have two WordPress sites. One is my professional portfolio, and then I have this other site that it's not accessible to the public. It's just kind of like my creative studio. And it's where I build all of my OERs, or sorry, all of my content for H5P. So I've already installed the plugin, which is H5P. And so I can go down to the H5P content, and I have 8 pages of activities that I've built. Let me show you how to build these. Any questions so far? So you access the plugin through the Buffs Create. Okay. All right. So if we wanted to, let's add new. Oh, and one more thing. With Buffs Create, you get 1 GB of storage, which is not a ton, but it's a place where you can play. And then if you want support, you can go to the Buffs Create drop-in tutorials. They're every Wednesday from 12:30 to 1:30. And so that's a free resource for you all if you want extra support in navigating all of this. Okay, so let's add some content. I just clicked on add content, and then you have a list of all of the types. Let's do a fill in the blank. Okay. So let's do a verb conjugation. Okay. And so that's my title. That's how I'll be able to find it. And then I want to add a description telling my users what they need to do here. I'm going to say, put the correct form of haben in the blanks. Haben is the verb to have. And so if you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do with this interface, before you even start adding a material here, you can watch a tutorial. You can see an example and watch a tutorial, and gives you steps by steps how to create this. Okay. But for time purposes, I'm just going to show you in real time what to do here. So I've got a title, I have a task description, and then in the text blocks, you'll see that, okay, if I want the student to fill in the blank, whatever I want them to put in the blank, we want to put it between asterisks. And that's how the program knows what to look for. So I've already pre-written a dialogue here. So this is a dialogue between Peter and Daniela, and they're talking about their families. And so I have a large family. I want this, I want the students to fill in the verbs with the correct conjugation. So every use of haben, I'm going to put in between asterisks. I think I got them all. Okay, so once I'm done with that, I can, okay, let's see, let's count how many I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 uses of the verb haben. So if I want students to get a point for each fill in the blank that they did correctly, I'm going to add 8 score ranges. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm going to distribute them evenly. Okay. And then behavioral settings, I can enable them to retry if they get the answer wrong. I can enable show solution, automatically check answers after input. Sure. And then require all fields to be answered before the solution can be viewed. So that kind of hinders a student from just like putting in one and then getting the answers for all of them. You know, it's not graded, but it still kind of encourages them to engage as much as possible. So I'm going to create that. And this is what it looks like. So let's say I'm going to put a couple of wrong ones in here or incorrect. It gives me automatic feedback right away because that's the setting that I had. Let's say I don't want that. I can always go back and edit. See, I didn't really, and I encourage you to try out every activity before you share. So when you notice things like that, oh, I didn't like how that didn't let me, that kind of was a hiccup or like a speed bump in finishing the activity. So I'm going to uncheck automatically check answers after input and see how that works. All right, I know that that's incorrect, but it's not going to show me the solution or give me like a percentage feedback until I'm done. I'll just complete this really quick. I'll just put in a bunch of wrong answers. Whoops. Okay. Great. And I can retry or have it show me the solution. Okay. So haben verb conjugation. Let's make another one really quick. I want to make a quiz. So maybe this is I want to do a quiz that students can do after we meet one day at, just to let them have an opportunity to demonstrate to themselves the skills that they learned. So let's title this mini quiz. I'm not going to put a background image. And then you could make a quiz using different kinds of questions. So let's do a true-false question to begin with. And I'm going to say Germany has 16 federal states. Okay, the correct answer is true, but I want to give feedback. So if the feedback is correct, I'm going to say, yes, there are 16. Oops. It's true, there are 16 states in Germany. Okay. Let's say I want another question. So I'm going to add another question here. And this one, I want another fill in the blanks. So oops. I don't need that as a title. I need that as a task description. There we go. So I've already created my text block. I'm just going to cut and paste here. Okay. So I'm using the verb heißen. I've given a little clue here to my students. That's the word, that's the infinitive that I want them to conjugate. But the word has that funny letter in it that is hard to find on the keyboard. So I can put alternatives in here. So if my students haven't mastered the use of the keyboard for like tildes or umlauts or things like that, I can give alternative spellings that are acceptable. So here I have the S set, and then I also have a double S here. And I'm just going to separate each of these sentences so they're a little bit more user-friendly, visually friendly. Okay. And let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I want to distribute evenly. Okay. I can also randomize the questions. So students, if they're like working side by side and you've got like a 10 questions on a quiz, they'll be delivered at different points, if that's important to you. And you can also randomize what questions are shown. Maybe you've got a quiz with 10 questions, but you only want to give 5, right? And have a random set. You can change that in the settings here. So I'm going to create this, see how it looks. I'm going to check that. Yep, there are 16. Okay, great. That works. I'm ready. I'm done with that. So next step, how do we embed these into our Canvas courses? With anything you create here or any OERs where you want to just use something and use it as your own, it's very simple. You click embed, copy that, and let me go back to my course here. I'm going to create a new page. Let's see, I'm going to November 2023. This is for today. Okay, our theme is H5P. So vor der Stunde. Okay, so this is kind of how I organize things in a very simple way. All right, so I want to embed, which activity did I choose? Okay, this is the quiz. Where do I want the quiz to go? I want the quiz at the end, something that the students will do after we meet. Okay. So this little embed icon here is what you want to click on. And I want to, before I click on that, because it turns everything into code, I just want to give myself a visual cue of where I want to put that. So I'm just going to put some X's there. And so I find the X's, I highlight the X's and replace it with the code that I just copied. Okay. And then I go back and it shows up. Let's say you have a lot of material on your page, right? With like explicit grammar, and you've got a section for, an audio or whatever, and you have a ton of stuff in there. Like, where do I put this? I don't want to put this at the end. I actually want to put it up here. I'll just give myself like a visual cue so I can find it, highlight it, stick it in there, and save. And so that's how you embed that tool into your Canvas. Very easy. Any questions on that?
Mindy's mind is blown.
Yeah, I don't know coding, but I'm determined to figure out how to use this in Canvas. My course shell at CU Denver, where I adjunct, has a really super handy plugin. So I can just go here and H5P shows up. And what's also cool is because it's a plugin, I can actually see if I want it graded, I can have it graded instead of, I mean, maybe Boulder will add that feature in the future, but this is an easy free workaround. It's not that hard. It does take a little bit of playing here and there. The last thing, I know we're kind of short on time here, but the last thing that I wanted to share with you is if you find an H5P tool in an OER and you're just like, wow, this is so cool, I don't want to spend the time making this myself, but I want to use this, but I kind of want to adapt it a little bit. Like the words here are like fall into the theme of like disability. I really like this, but there may be 1 or 2 words that I wish that I could change. You can totally change it. And then these circles here are just the grammatical genders, and it's a drag and drop like that. So, wow, this is so cool. I want to use it, but I want to change it for my own use. You can reuse, download this as an H5P file. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my little, where am I at? My little sandbox thing here. I'm going to go to add new content. I'm going to upload. So I'm going to upload this file. Let me go to my downloads. There it is. Use. Okay. I'm going to create. Okay. So I'm going to title this German. Let's see. Drag and drop, whatever. 1. Okay, so here's the image that's already transferred over. Really, there are like two plates here, 2 image plates that you're working with. So you have the base image, and then you have the tasks. Okay, so here I see all of my words. Let's say that I want to change one of these to a word that is more useful to my students, like vocabulary learning for that unit. Okay, so that one's done. Okay, I need to just make that a little bit bigger so it shows the whole word because it's a long word. Okay, and then I also want to change this one. And these are all the same. These are words with the same grammatical gender, so I don't have to change where they go in the drop. So I'm going to change this one to sign language. Okay. Also very, very long word. So I just need to open that up here, maybe change a few locations. Okay, that looks good to me. Now I've adopted it for my own use. Okay, create. There we go. Now it works better with the theme that I'm using for my, the unit that I'm teaching. And same thing, I can just copy, and I have to find where my Canvas course is. Okay. Let's see. Let's say I want this to be the very first thing that my students do. So I'm just going to give myself a little visual cue here. Go back to that embed and stick the code right up there. See if it worked. Great. And it's in there. I'm going to save. And there I've got it. Okay. So that is a lot of information and a lot of back and forth in Windows, but the resource page that I shared with you has links to the majority of what I've shared with you. There are also, again, tutorials for every single content activity, and it gives you step by step, it gives you examples. So it is a little bit of trial and error and playing around with those different settings to get exactly what you want. But after you work with it, you develop a literacy, I'll just say it. And it does take a while, but it's, also too, if you're like, gosh, I really love this activity, I spent so much time on it, but the students are just like, they need it to be a little bit easier or more challenging, you can go back and edit it. Whatever is in your Buff One or Buffs Create, like page with the plugin, that material is yours and you can edit as needed, right? And as long as you are CU affiliate, you have that's your material for as long as you're here. So we're 5 minutes. What kind of questions or observations or ideas that came to mind that you would like to share? I would love to hear maybe things that, ideas of how you might harness this tool for your own use.
Well, you definitely got me excited to go and create. Now I know where you got it and how you did it. Because I've seen some of your stuff before. So now that's really exciting to go and work with it. And I had no idea that if it is embedded with that sign, that means that that's what you can copy and then just take it without quoting it anything. So you don't have to say the source or anything. You can just use it.
It's an OER. Yeah.
Okay, so I had no idea about that. So thank you.
So Pia, you're familiar with the syllabi that we use for the German courses or classes at ALTEC. And I do put Grenzenlos Deutsch as a resource, right? So I do give credit there, and that's public information. Like that is, we use a lot of material. So I do think it's nice to credit those OERs that we're using, at least on the syllabus, but within Canvas, right? That's not a public
So like if I
platform.
I always also did it on my slides when I did the class,
Right,
so then I
right,
don't
right.
really have to do that since I already have it on my syllabus and have other references. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I draw a lot from this OER. Yeah. I think is pretty fine. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I just finished creating the Tibetan course, which is also an OER. It's accessible to everyone. And I hope people use it because it's such a inaccessible language that, like, yes, please take all that material and use it for yourself. I don't need credit. Like, that's not important to me. What's important to me is providing accessibility to that language. And I think that people who create OERs I think that there's the same attitude. Like, that's the future. Textbooks are expensive, and who's interested in gatekeeping knowledge?
Right. That's how I feel too. So this is a place to really go and share your own stuff too, so everybody else can have access to it. Right.
Do you think you guys might play around with this a little bit? Pia, yes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
How about you, Alina?
Yeah, I mean, I already used some of activities like that I found online, and sometimes they have mistakes in them.
Yes.
And students are like, but here it shouldn't be that. I'm like, you're right. Good job. You found a mistake. But now actually I can change it myself and it the correct activity rather than something where I say, hey, this is from the internet. So sometimes it has errors.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. So yeah, you can adapt and correct if needed.
Yeah, especially correcting, because sometimes you realize you see some really cool stuff and sometimes it's stuff that's misspelled or the wrong tense and I don't want to show that to my students really.
Or dialect too, right? Like various words for different, if you're doing, focusing on Vienna versus Berlin, right? There are different ways to say bread, or bread rolls in that dialect. And maybe you want to encourage that sort of vocabulary learning for more advanced speakers.
Yeah, or the difference between French and Canadian French.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. I was just always referring to my area of expertise.
So do I.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm so glad it was useful.
Yeah, on my end, I don't use Canvas on a regular basis, but I used to as a TA, and it would have been really cool to be able to add some of these exercises. But who knows, maybe in the future I'll have, a reason to use Canvas again. It certainly seems really like user friendly. Like you said, maybe you have to play around with it a little bit, but it seems like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of copy and paste this, maybe edit it as needed. Even if you don't want to create your own, it's really useful that you can just share.
Yeah.
But it could be useful for ALTEC because you guys had that Canvas course where students could go and get paired up with the same level. And eventually you might want to add some activities there per level so students can play around,
Excellent.
She's writing it
idea.
down.
I love this kind of collaboration. This is great.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're at time.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions, you feel free to email me. My contact information is on the ALTEC website. And thanks so much for being here, everybody. I really appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you so much, Maggie, and thank you everyone for
Thank you so much. I had a great time. I learned a lot. All right. Have a good one, everybody.
You too. Go vote.